Welcome back to the PhoneGap Essentials course on NetTuts Plus Premium. Today we're going to take a look at the Geolocation API. With Geolocation, we can pinpoint a device's real-world position and return values such as its longitude and latitude. This information is inferred from the Global Positioning System and can also be inferred from network signals such as IP addresses, Wi-Fi, MAC addresses, and RFID information. Now, while you can constantly watch the device position using the watch position function, we're just going to use the get current position function. When we want to get the current position, we need to also pass in geolocation options. There are three different variables we can pass. The first is maximum age. This is the maximum age of cached information that will be accepted by our call. This number is in milliseconds. Timeout is the amount of time that's allowed to pass between making the original call and receiving the information without it being counted as an error. And the enable high accuracy parameter is a boolean which tells the device whether we would like to use more accurate methods of positioning, such as satellite positioning. A quirk to note with Android 2 devices is that it will return null if we do not enable this high accuracy option. So let's get started. Open up your index.js file. The function we need to call is on the navigator object .geolocation.getCurrentPosition, and we need to pass two functions as parameters. We're going to have to create a function called onGeoSuccess and onGeoError. Here is our success function, and it gets passed a position object which contains all of the geolocation position information. Our error function gets passed an error object, which might help us to find out what the error was. In the error function, we're simply going to open up an alert box with the error code and the error message. On success, however, we're going to print out the latitude and the longitude. We access this on the position object in coords, latitude and longitude. When I run this code in the emulator, we get the alert box. This is because the emulator does not have geolocation information. Now, while the Android emulator does not have geolocation information, in Xcode, the iOS simulator is able to simulate this information for us. Here you can see the exact same code, our geolocation object calling the GeoSuccess and GeoError functions. If I run this in the iPhone simulator, you can see that it provides us with some values. Longitude and latitude. If I'm not mistaken, it's giving us the position of Apple's head office in Cupertino. But what can we do with this information? Using Google Maps APIs, we can actually make a call to one of their web services, and passing in the latitude and longitude, we can get in return location information such as the nearest address to that point on the map. If I pass these two values here into the Google Maps API, I can actually get address information based on that position. You can test this out in the browser. Here's the call in its entirety. The API is located at maps.googleapis.com/maps/API/geocode. We then pass as a variable the latitude and longitude, like this, 37.7858, -122.406, and then a final variable called sensor, which we'll set to false. The information you see on the left is all of the relevant address information that comes back from the latitude and longitude which I've collected from the device. Using JavaScript, AJAX, we'll be able to make that call from within our app to bring that information directly to the user. In order to use AJAX, we'll need to add jQuery to our project folder. Inside the JavaScript folder, the JS folder, I'm going to add jQuery. This is the latest version which I got from jQuery.com. Now I'm going to create two variables that can be global variables for my app called lat and long. I'll set them both equal to 0 at the moment, and this way they'll be accessible to all functions within the app. Next, in our onGeoSuccess function, when we collect the information of latitude and longitude, I'm going to store it in those two variables. So here you can see app.lat equals position.chords.latitude, and the longitude equals position.chords.longitude. I'm now going to create a function called getPlace. GetPlace can use the app.lat and app.long variables to make an AJAX call to the Google Maps API. The JSON object that returns from that call will contain information about the place and places closest to this longitudinal and latitudinal position. We're going to call the getPlace function with a click. We're going to attach a click event listener on the app.testzone div. On click, we'll be calling app.getPlace. This way, we can give jQuery time to load before we make the call. Obviously, if we were really developing this app, we would use jQuery's onReady function to make sure that it was ready along with the device being ready. But for now, we just want to test it out. We can do it like this. That reminds me, we also need to add a reference to jQuery in our index file. Before we call the index.js, we're going to also call jQuery.js. So let's take a look at the getPlace function. We're going to be using a function called getJSON. This is a simplified version of the AJAX function in jQuery. It'll take two parameters. One will be a string which contains the URL of the JSON we'd like to retrieve, and the second will be a function which is the callback and will be called once we've retrieved the JSON. This function will be passed a parameter called data, which will contain the JSON object. So firstly, let's get our URL. We can use the URL that we were experimenting with in our browser before. This is the URL to the Google Maps API. Instead of hard coding a latitude and longitude, however, we're going to use the two variables we defined earlier. So we're going to add app.lat onto this URL plus a comma to separate the two values, plus app.long. We also need to add in the sensor variable. Next, we'll define our callback function. All we want to do is to get an address from this longitude and latitude and write it into our test zone div. To understand the structure of the JSON we'll be receiving, we can check out the experiment we did earlier in the browser. Our data object has a results array inside of it. The results array is just a single item array. Inside results, we have a formatted address. This is the variable we're going to want to use. So app.testzone.innerHTML equals data.results, and we're going to retrieve the first and only element in the array, dot formatted address. And there you can see it in action. Well, that's all for geolocation. If you'd like an extra challenge, why not try embedding a Google map into your application? You can then pass longitudinal and latitudinal details to that Google map in order to show the user's current position. You can find out more at developer.google.com/maps. Check back in for Lesson 9, where we'll be exploring the Compass API. Ciao!